So, it would appear that Mr. Rodgers is producing a new show in the neighborhood. A new show where he brings all the warm, fuzzy feelings that is associated with Mr. Rodgers. Because it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, is it not? Don't you just love it when Mr. Rodgers creates a new show for the neighborhood?
Mr. Rodgers is making a new show in the neighborhood, and there ain't room for two shows in this town. It seems that final space has been eliminated, and now...
Okay, note to self, try not to use the throaty voice too much. And now, Godspeed seems to be avenging Final Space. For those of you who don't know who Mr. Rodgers is, no, he is not the Mr. Rodgers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I made the joke on purpose. Actually, I'm of course referring to Olan Rodgers. You've probably heard of Olan Rodgers, right? Especially you, my sister. Hi, sister. Olan Rodgers is a YouTuber, actor, and comedian. Please excuse the mic. Olan Rodgers is a comedic actor who used to be part of a comedy group called Balloon Shop, I believe it was called, before making his own independent YouTube channel where he made a lot of comedic stuff. Most of his content is much beloved. Olan Rodgers has this wild, passionate energy about him. Kind of similar to Jack Black. It's like if Jack Black had a son who wouldn't stop posting stuff on YouTube.
Every piece of paint was let loose. And I knew if I couldn't hit him, Wesley could. He was my backup plan. So I looked to my right, expecting to see Wesley. He was still hiding. I could see his stupid little melon head poking out of the wall, looking at me. I started screeching, Wesley, shoot him! Freaking Wesley gets up. I'm like cheering. I'm like, yes, Wesley! And he shoots me in the thigh.
Jack Black has also been producing content on YouTube as of late as well, so... Many people who are familiar with Olan Rodgers will have fond memories of his funny stories.
I say something that I did not think all the way through. And I say, I'm going to use both of these in a spoon to become a serial killer. I knew what I was trying to say. You know, which I was just going to eat a lot of cereal. You know, because I made that promise to myself. And, it probably wasn't the best way to word things. My dad didn't go on the personal vision quest that I had with the cereal bowl. So, to him, it just came off like I was just going to go on a murdering spree with a spoon. Nevertheless, I sprint past my dad into the bathroom, and I freaking open up a valve. A full-on explosion of pee. And it just rips waves into a cereal bowl of a different kind. That was actually the third greatest moment of my life.
There are plenty of funny stories. In fact, it's the way that Olan Rodgers tells the stories that makes them so funny in the first place. I mean, the stories are fun enough as it is, but Olan Rodgers just makes them hysterical.
Would you like some more tea?
Yes. Alexander! He seems a bit deaf, Chauncey.
He is deaf.
Well, give him a shout louder, Chauncey, so he can hear you.
Alexander! Tea!
Alexander! Alexander! Alexander!
Make haste and come hither, boy. Oh, you really do need to start listening better.
I mean, we've been shouting a good... What is he doing? What? Oh, what is this? Oh, Chauncey! He's attacking me with a gelatinous choking tablet! Toy with it, Chauncey!
It's an after-tea marshmallow.
Toy with it! Toy with it!
Although, you'd be surprised at how much passion Olan Rodgers has for storytelling. Animated storytelling. You see, in case you haven't realized by now, one of the things I advocate for on this channel is that I genuinely believe that despite what culture and what other kinds of opposition may say, animation has the possibility to be works of art. Because each individual picture that goes into an animated story is pretty much a piece of artwork in and of itself, or at the very least has the potential to be. I'll show some examples. Whenever the topic of animation as an artwork comes to mind, I would usually refer people to stuff like Violet Evergarden, Samurai Jack, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I would also refer you to the vast majority of the Studio Ghibli films, as well as The Prince of Egypt, as well as the Disney Fantasia series, Cowboy Bebop, Vinland Saga, Naoki Urasawa's Monster, a number of different animated shorts I could mention on the internet. Basically, what makes animation such an interesting art form is the fact that it's not just fodder for children, as is a common belief here in the West, and nor is it an excuse for like raunchy stuff, as if it was made by high schoolers and middle schoolers in their edgy emo phase, where they keep thinking about hookers and drugs and stuff like that. No. Animation has the possibility of creatively showcasing the kind of stories that live-action stories couldn't quite properly tell. Olan Rodgers seems to understand this. In fact, he's dedicated a number of years creating a story of his own. An adult, animated, epic sci-fi opera comedy series called Final Space. And for quite a while, it was quite surprising that an independent YouTuber as himself was able to gain such a reputation to even make this animated series possible. And it managed to run for 3 whole seasons before tragically being cancelled just when Final Space was reaching its finale. But Olan Rodgers has been pushing for a graphic novel of some kind that would complete the Final Space story. Final Space was a really well-made show. It wasn't without its critiques, but unlike so many people, Olan Rodgers is actually willing to take this criticism to heart and learn from them, which is really well appreciated. Well done for you, Olan Rodgers. So it's understandable why Olan Rodgers would play up the comedy when it comes to Final Space, because he's just a goofy guy. It just makes sense for him to do that. However, with this new promising series, it seems that he's playing up the drama for this one, whilst also leaving in some room for some goofy humor. All we have so far is a half-hour, or more precisely 28 minutes or so, animated pilot episode, followed by a link to a website for a Kickstarter campaign. This short, and presumably the series that follows after it, will be called Godspeed. This title alone is likely a deliberate reference to the main protagonist of the Final Space series, Gary Goodspeed. It's as if to say that Olan Rodgers is not done making epic sci-fi stories yet. In fact, since Final Space got cancelled, he's more motivated to tell compelling animated stories more than ever. And my days, it really shows with his talents and what he's learned here. And right from the get-go, you can really tell this is going to be a very special animated product, because the animation, whilst it is clearly on the cheap side, it looks absolutely gorgeous. You can tell there was a lot of passion and effort put into it. It just goes to show, especially with recent films like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, is that just because you have a low budget, that doesn't mean you can't make the most of the resources you have at hand to have the most creative product possible. The art style in this case is kind of reminiscent of Samurai Jack or some other shows where the character design is a little on the sharp side, like Abstract Objects. And the tone of this is pretty gritty. In fact, the tone is quite depressing. But it's not without its glimmer of hope, which I guess is the main thematic of the story. But what is this story all about? The animation tells the story of a young woman by the name of Iris, who had gotten separated from a man by the name of Ryan.
It's time for Plan B. Calibrate for alternate transmission.
Who is voiced by none other than Troy Baker himself, who I met at Comic-Con.
So thank you. Yeah, my pleasure.
Hello, Mr. Baker. Now, I asked this question to Peter Davidson, the Fifth Doctor, yesterday.
Okay.
So, what's it like to be in this, what should I think, voice acting industry? What's it like to work there, and how do you get in to begin with?
The implication there is there's a door and that there's a toll, and there simply isn't. I mean, for me, I tripped backwards into this. Again, my path was music. I happened to be in a studio that was doing car adverts, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Of it, it's worth it. It is hysterically hilarious. And chances are you'll probably hear me laughing in the audience. I have a very distinct, loud voice.
Anyway, Troy, Nolan, you've had experience with motion capture rather than the vast majority of your acting roles. What advice would you give if any of us happen to be doing any motion capture work?
Motion capture work is basically theater. So anybody who's done, any actor who's done theater, it's the same thing except your costume happens to be this ridiculously tight suit.
Hopefully Troy Baker is okay with voicing a character who looks like Omni-Man, and that J.K. Simmons isn't gonna have a rant about plagiarism, which may or may not involve Lemon's reference to Portal 2. So anyway, Iris has been separated from the Troy Baker character, who is Ryan, because apparently there seems to be this big sun star thing that's approaching the planet Earth and causing it to become quite desolate and dangerous to live on. So, the vast majority of humans abandon Earth via rocket ships, and Iris chooses not to get on one of them and he gets separated from Ryan. He stays on Earth with some kind of mother figure by the name of June, and it's implied later on that June got separated from her own son. So now at present, Iris is driving around the desolate Earth with a robot with a soul as a companion. Specifically, a robot who's basically a walking, talking karaoke machine who just loves to party.
This place doesn't look like it has a signal.
It doesn't. Just keep your eyes peeled, Bowie.
I see nothing. I see a house. Another house. Another house.
Take a wild guess as to who voices this comedic companion. None other than Mr. Rogers himself. And sorry, not Fred Rogers. I'm sorry.
I don't think anyone's up. Look! Oh! Look at all this partying! It's got cups and bottle caps and pennies. Oh, wow!
Just power up while you can. I'm gonna go look.
I'm way ahead of you. Linking up now.
Now, in a lot of stories, these kind of comedic sidekicks could tend to be annoying, and I wouldn't be surprised if people would describe Olan Rogers' robot character called Bowie in those terms. However, given the gritty tone of the story and the unique sci-fi setting, I think the goofy humor that Olan Rogers provides in the Bowie character provides some much-needed levity to balance out the tone of the story and to keep people invested.
Oh! Iris! There's music. I'm downloading all of it. I live for this.
Wait. Is that a nightlight?
Yeah, it's a nightlight mode.
I didn't know you had a nightlight mode.
Me neither. That could have came in handy a lot of times.
Because the overall tone of the story is, even when everything is desolate, there can be hope, even in small glimmers. That's a beautiful message, and I think having Olan Rogers portray this comedic robot with a soul, give out all these funny comments about wanting to party, akin to the mole from The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, constantly obsessing about cake.
If at first you don't succeed, have some cake.
I think it's a good balance, and it's a necessary balance, and one that thematically works with the theme of finding hope, even when it's all desolate.
You taught me, no matter what, hope keeps us alive. That there's no life without hope. But there's no hope without life.
And the comedic sidekick also serves as a plot function in regards to trying to find internet signal to receive messages from Troy Baker's character of Ryan. I've noticed there's some nods to the Final Space series. Like, obviously, some are not very subtle, like Godspeed is obviously a reference to the protagonist, but then you have this robot sidekick who is a shout out to the other annoying robot sidekick from Final Space. But in Final Space, Olan Rogers made that robot sidekick annoying on purpose for comedic purposes, you know. So it's interesting to see. There's even a cat alien creature, which is also an obvious shout out to the Final Space series. So I think it's very clear that this is kind of a spiritual successor to the Final Space series, but it's upping the drama, but still leaving in elements of comedy for necessary levity. The world that Iris and Bowie traverse around is one that's desolate, one filled with people who are trying to aspire for hope, and one where people often give up trying to find hope. It's a very grim, very desolate, very depressing place, and even June herself, as a mother figure, is willing that she's not going to run anymore, and that she hopes that Iris will be able to find her son. But hope eventually does come around when Iris follows a series of clues that lead to the launch place, where he encounters the cat alien known as Kingslayer. Hopefully that kind of title can be used for good and not for evil. And it's implied that they're going to try to find Iris's dad or parents.
Your mother and I have to fight an unwinnable battle. And it won't be the first, it won't. But we have to try to destroy this thing before it arrives. My Uncle Ryan is going to look after you. He's going to keep you safe.
And they're about to start quite the journey. And so, Godspeed, Iris. And so, as of recording this, the animated pilot episode has been released yesterday, and I thought, you know what? I might as well spread the word. Might as well do this for my man, Mr. Rodgers of the neighborhood. Okay, just one more thing. I deliberately wore the red jumper as a reference to Fred Rodgers. So yeah, go support Olan Rodgers with this Kickstarter series, because this series has a lot of potential. And it's clear that Olan Rodgers, unlike a lot of people in modern Hollywood these days, Olan Rodgers actually cares, first and foremostly, about telling a good story rather than making a profit. I mean, obviously Olan Rodgers needs the necessary money to get the series created in the first place, obviously, and yet it's very clear that Olan Rodgers isn't the only storyteller who just wants to tell a good story rather than to try to make a profit or try to force a message down your throat. Olan Rodgers is one of those storytellers akin to Christopher Nolan, Martin Scorsese, Hayao Miyazaki, and many other people who just, as well as almost the entirety of Japan, who just cares about telling a good quality story. And so, Godspeed, Olan Rodgers. How should I rate this animated? What would I rate this? I'd probably rate this 11.7 out of 12. It's got potential, and I look forward to seeing more. Until then, ScotsThinker signing out.
Godspeed, Iris.
So, it would appear that Mr. Rodgers is creating a new show in the neighborhood, because everyone just loves the warm, fuzzy feelings that comes from Mr. Rodgers and the way he tells his stories, the way he sort of interacts with, the different puppets and stuff like that. And no, that's not going to work. So, from what I can gather, the story tells us. Okay, copyright for that bit goes to Gorillas. The story, from what I can gather so far, tells the story. The story, from what I can tell, tells.